Do you use Stampin' Up! Inks on your handmade cards and paper craft projects? If so, there are some things you need to know. Stay tuned to see how to get the best results with your ink pads. Hi, this is Sage Kimball and I'm the Mad Stamper with more tips for card makers and paper crafters. In 2012, Stampin' Up! Switched to a new kind of pad for their classic dye inks. The old pads were made of felt and the new ones are made of a firm foam. I've had customers ask questions that show they're still confused about the difference and how to use each most effectively. First of all, how do you know which one you have? If you bought a pad from Stampin' Up! After May of 2012, then you definitely have a firm foam pad. But let's look at the difference. At first glance, they may look alike to you. Here's a close-up of a felt pad. You can see the weave of the threads on the surface. If it's a pad you've used a lot, like this one, you may see these loose threads even along the edges. And the pad may dip in the middle so that it's no longer perfectly flat, which means getting even coverage on your stamps can be even more of a problem. Now compare that to the firm foam pad. In this close-up, you don't see any threads and the surface is shiny. Even after lots of use, your pad is going to stay flat. With a felt pad, the ink has soaked into the pad and saturates the felt. While with the foam pads, the ink sits on top of the pad and your stamp will pick up more ink. Of course, there are pros and cons with each type of ink pad. With felt pads, getting good ink coverage on a silhouette stamp or one with a lot of flat rubber can be a problem. I have to tap on the pad several times and even twist the stamp so it will pick up an even layer of ink. And even with all the care that I took with getting the stamp inked real well, you can see that I still didn't get very good coverage in the center of this stamp. With the ink sitting on top of the firm foam pad, it only takes a few gentle taps to ink a stamp like this. And you can see how I get much better coverage with very little effort. With the foam pad, since the ink is sitting on the top of the pad, it's easy to over ink your stamps, especially with fine line stamps like with a sentiment. And then you get uneven coverage and you get stray marks if there's ink that got on the edge of the rubber. With either type of pad, I always check the edges of the rubber and wipe off any excess ink before I stamp. The juiciness of the foam pads can especially be a challenge with a stamp like this tree that has a lot of fine lines in it, and I have to be really careful not to over ink it. So just a couple of light taps on the pad and I'll get all the details showing. Here's another one I did where I got way too much ink on it, and you can see you don't get as much detail. If you love to heat emboss in whatever color matches your project, then you're going to love the firm foam pad. Because the ink is juicy, it stays wet long enough to be able to apply clear embossing powder to it. You can emboss with felt pads. However, you need to first ink your stamp with Versamark and then tap it on your colored ink pad. The Versamark will help hold the embossing powder. You might get a little lighter color, not quite as bright as using the foam pads. It's important to keep your ink pads moist, so if your image starts to look a little anemic, then you know it's time to re-ink them. So you take a refill of the appropriate color, and this is a felt pad, and you just put some squiggles of ink on the pad, and you can see that it's starting to soak into the pad already. And as I let this sit, it will saturate the entire pad. It will spread out throughout the felt. Now with the foam pads, you can see what happens when I put a squiggle of ink on the pad. It doesn't soak in at all. So you need to spread it around, and I just use the back of a plastic spoon. You can use a bone folder or any kind of plastic instrument that will allow you to spread the ink across the pad. If you end up with too much ink on your pad and you're just getting too much ink on your stamps, you can actually take a paper towel and blot some of that ink off of the pad so that you won't have as much trouble with your fine line stamps. So there you have it. That's what you need to know about Stampin' Up! Ink pads for your handmade cards and paper craft projects. If you found this video helpful, be sure to click on the thumbs up button and leave a comment. That'll just encourage me to keep making more videos for you. Then click on the subscribe button so you'll stay informed whenever I post new ones. For more inspiration and instruction, be sure to visit me on my website at www.stampingmadly.com, the Stamping Madly Facebook page, and the Mad Stamper YouTube channel. Happy stamping!